I'm Dan Morris, you're watching Bosun Dan Bushcraft, and today we are going to be answering a question that I am constantly never being asked. What is my smallest lamp or paraffin appliance? So, in answer to the question that nobody has actually ever asked me, I've just made up for the fun of it. The answer to that question, what is the smallest lamp or paraffin appliance I have, it is actually these. There are 4 of these floating around, and I've only brought the 2 for today because, you know, what's one is another. It's exactly the same. They all are the same. These are, in fact, what is commonly known as a pixie lamp. I have also heard of them being called baby lamps or ladies' lamps or any other number of little words. You can find these, a lot of them you'll find in charity shops and on little markets and things like that. And they are such a lovely, charming little lamp. And with a big slurp of vitamin coffee. This cup cools down quick because it's huge, so I'm going to put that back on the old Valavector behind me and let it warm up. Anyway, now these things, pixie lamps. Charming little things. They use a little round rope wick and obviously paraffin, kerosene, other types of lamp oil that are out. Turn up your little round wick, light the thing straight up, and with all of these paraffin lamps, as I say every time, just wind that wick right down until it's about as small as the flame will go. Pop your lens back on, or your globe, right, and just let that all warm up, because as always, as she warms up, that flame will grow a little bit. So what are these things? They look kind of ornamental, don't they, in a sense. They look almost like they're one of them sort of things that was made that was never really intended for a practical use. It's just made. Not at all. These are actually bedside lamps. Really, they are night lights. You would put them somewhere, obviously in a safe place, not where you're going to throw your quilt over it, but you'd pop them somewhere so that you could see in the night if you needed to get up for whatever reason, or if you needed to put it next to where a bigger lamp is or your main source of light so you can see what you are doing. They were obviously favoured in bathrooms and toilets and things, particularly in the era when these things were about, when a lot of people had outside toilets. And of course the problem with outside toilets, particularly in winter, is they're dark, they're cold, and usually frozen solid. Your pipes freeze. Little things like this would give off just enough heat to sort of stop that from happening. I remember the reason I got into collecting these sorts of things in the first place was a grandmother of mine gave me a Fjordhand 275 baby lamp, and she used to use that to stop the outdoor toilet freezing in winter and or keep the greenhouse warm. Excellent secondary use for these things. But I'm sure at some point in life we have all us played this game in the night where you get up for a pee and you do that trying not to turn the lights on, trying to not to spoil you I just want to go back to sleep feeling. You certainly don't want a gigantic bright light in the face when it's 2 AM and you just want to go and relieve yourself. That's where things like this come in. Just enough light really to be able to see what you're doing and not wake you up completely. But, and this is again, it's a question because well, Dan, how is that bushcraft? Well, really that comes down to the way I view bushcraft, to be fair. I look at the world of bushcraft, survival, prepping, homesteading, subsistence living, all of those sorts of things, right down to just general purpose camping. I put them all under one gigantic umbrella of bushcraft, because let's look at the word craft in bushcraft. It's the ability to do stuff, isn't it? To be resourceful and use what is around you. So after all that waffle, what I'm really saying is, to me, these things will always have uses because they are a source of light and heat. And if you're looking at bushcraft from a homesteading point of view, Little things like this would be ideal again in your polytunnels and greenhouses and things like that, just to stave off the frost. Also, they do give off carbon dioxide and probably carbon monoxide as well. Now, anybody who knows anything about greenhouses and stuff, depending on what it is you're growing, sometimes you cannot get enough CO2 in there to help the plants out. So a great advantage of them. And other greenhouse heaters, obviously. Another thing with them is, because the flame is only really about the size of, say, a tea light candle, they really do not use much oil. The exact time you would get in hours, I can't really say offhand, and these are different types, they've got different size tanks, but you're gonna get, it wouldn't surprise me if we got like 48 hours of constant burn time out of these things. They use fairly no oil. The flame is so small, and it is operating like a candle, unlike the other lamps that have the airflow features that it naturally draws air through itself to raise the flame and make it bigger. These don't really, they just, a little amount of that goes on from there, but it's not designed specifically to make the flame grow. So the flame stays tea light candle size really. Doesn't use much oil. Carries on and burns for ages and ages and ages. So could you use these in your bushcraft shelter? Certainly, as long as it's not too windy. These things aren't super bothered by wind, but the wind will put them out if it gets too much. But like I've said, generally you can find these quite cheap on little markets, and you know, they're online. I'm not going to quote prices because that changes all the time, and you always get the people who are trying to sell them who are like, antique lamp, it's worth 12 grand, when no, it's still a tenner. They're being made still, but it's nice to have an older one. You can still get these things brand spanking new. They are still in production all over the world, because I'm sure that other than keeping your bog warm and using them in a greenhouse, I imagine all over the place these things have a great many uses, really. You know, this one, with having this only half acid etched glass there, casts more of a light downwards than it does outwards. I imagine that was done with purpose, not just coincidentally. Perhaps you can use it to read, or, you know, let's not speculate. It's just a charming little lamp that I think has some charming little uses depending on exactly what you're looking for. Is it one to throw in your rucksack and take camping with you? No, not really. Let's be, I only say that because sometimes you get funny comments on things where people are like, no, you couldn't do blah, blah, blah. No, I'm not saying that you should. So it's just a sweet little lamp. Lovely. Now this one, it's exactly the same thing. It works in exactly the same way. Very, very thin glass on this one. That one's really heavy and really thick. Works in exactly the same way. It has a much bigger reservoir on it, but this one is actually misbehaving at the moment. It's not burning right, and then it tends to put itself out, and it's bubbling and boiling on top of the wick there when I light it. No, there we go, Luke, straight away put itself out. Now you might be thinking, well, there's no oil in it. Well, yeah, there is. I can see, and I can also smell. Now with this, and this, what I'm about to waffle about now, doesn't really have anything in particular to do with the pixie lamp on its own. This is all lamps that run with a wick, because what I suspect is wrong with that is a contaminated wick. I can see the colour is pretty dirty underneath when you take it out of the tank, and it kind of has a slimy, waxy appearance, which they shouldn't. They should just look wet but relatively clean. Now, with all of these sorts of lamps, and particularly the hurricane lamps, if they're not working right, it's going to be one of three things. It's either airflow, it's a ruined or completely contaminated dirty wick, or it's contaminated fuel. After that, there really isn't that much that can realistically go wrong with them. Now this one, as it goes out, smells kind of waxy to me. Now it won't even light. Yeah, that wick is not absorbing anything at all. Yeah. Yeah. And if you smell that, it smells like wax or turpentine or something else that it shouldn't smell like. Yeah, burning kerosene, burning paraffin has a very distinct flavour, I might say, a distinct smell, which is hard to describe. But as far as burning fuels go, it's a really clean smell. It doesn't smell heavy of anything like that. It's just a very slight, almost like furniture polishy sort of smell about it, whereas that one smells very heavily waxy and kind of heavy, oily. So I suspect at some point somebody's put the wrong type of fuel in this. I know that I bought a lamp the other week that when I came to light it and everything, somebody had put it, I assumed they'd put engine oil in it or something by the smell. Anywho, the only solution with this one to get it running again is going to be a new wick and flush the tank out and get whatever's in there out of there. Your number one things that are going to contaminate kerosene when the lamp is standing is ambient air, water vapor getting into it like it can with any fuel, or dust or any other thing that's got in that tank. I mean, there's actually stuff floating in it, don't know what that is. But over time, your tank can get stuff in it which will corrupt the paraffin. Now, does not such of a big deal with this fella because it's ceramic, but when you get your hurricane lamps and stuff, a lot of the time when people have stored them, they've stored them without paraffin in them. The inside of the tank's gone a bit rusty, and when that rust gets into the fuel, eventually it gets drawn into the wick, and the more bits of stuff that get drawn onto your wick slow down its ability to wick, to bring the fuel up, which will then in turn make it smoke and misbehave and just be a bit of a nightmare. So it is important to keep your tanks clean, particularly with a steel frame lamp. If you are storing it for a great length of time, store it with the tank full of kerosene, then it won't rust. Anywho, the only way really to sort this is get that wick out, stick a new wick in it and give it a good clean and see if it stops its silly behaviour of not lighting and constantly going out. There he goes, bubbling, boiling again. When they boil and fizz like that, that is a sign of contaminated fuel. And the bubbling and fizzing as it's doing that, the contaminant is usually water. Yeah, it's usually some sort of water that's contaminating it, because what you see in there with the bubbling and the fizz is the water content boiling and disappearing as steam, basically, which obviously, you know, the fuel you're burning is not doing that, and it's bubbling and boiling away. Not what we want. So let's get this sorted out. So the keen-eyed amongst you, or the people who are repeated offenders at tuning in to watch what has rapidly become Dan's lamp porn, you guys may have noticed the absence of a certain large grey boat that's usually in the background behind me. To any of you who might care, it is not currently resting at the bottom of the lake, having done a Titanic recreation or anything like that. I've just moved it out of the way and all of its paraphernalia, because I have in fact been working on it recently, getting it ready to finally go on the water. So if any of you people out there are big RC fans and you're just looking thinking, where's the boat? It's fine, it's not sunk. And for those of you that don't care, thank you for listening to my waffle. Right, I'm going to learn from my usual mistakes of covering this desk in paraffin completely. I'm going to throw some blue roll under it. Yeah. You see, that is all about the wrong colour. I don't know if the colour's going to show because the light's a bit low, but you can see it's yellowy orange. It's not what you want. We'll just whip that straight out. Yeah, pretty sure that's what the problem is. Tube is absolutely crystal clear. A little bit of dirt and fluff and birdseed in there. Take the new wick. Now that is way too short. Don't be tempted with these things to put a shorter wick in. Like, if it's too short, there's no point, because it's like, if it reaches the bottom of the tank and has a little bit of a bend on it, that's perfectly fine. You'll get a good use out of that. But all that usually happens when you put wicks in that are too short is your lamp starts running out of fuel quicker, obviously, because there's not enough wick in there, and then it'll burn itself out, and the more it burns itself out from running out of fuel, the more of your wick it actually eats. And it's just that circle of you just constantly burning wick, and oh, wick's got, I need another wick. Like, yeah, if you give it a bit of slack, it'll run out, you know what I'm saying, it'll run out less, you won't lose as much wick. So get your new wick. Sometimes you can just, the end where it gets a bit worried and frayed, sometimes you can just tweak it about with a lighter and get most of the fluff off it, and you'll still be able to get it up the tube alright. If not, you'll have to trim it. Now with most of these, hello. Bit of something stuck in the tube. With most lamps like this, or with the hurricane lamps, excuse me, it's a bit wiggly to get the wick in. Sometimes it takes several attempts, starting from the bottom and then trying from the top. With these, it should go in alright from the bottom. So looking at it now, it has actually been damaged a little bit around the wick carrier tube there. So I'm just going to use these little pointy pliers and see if I can just shape that back to what it should be like. Right, it's a bit better of a shape. Let's try that again. This is always a fiddly task. So if you're trying to put a wick in a lamp and you're struggling, don't think you're doing something terribly wrong. You're not. It's perfectly normal for it to be a bit of a pain in the bum. It was about 10 minutes of faffing about to get it in. It is now in and free, moving quite nicely. Gets stuck a bit there, just give it a turn. Yeah, there we go. It's not the best movement. In all fairness, this wick I've got here is probably not, it's not the right size. It needs to be just a touch thicker. I haven't got that. I will order it and put the right wick in it after this video, but for what we're doing, I'll just get it done with what I've got, mainly just to see if that is the problem, which I'm pretty sure it will be. So once you've got to that point, once you got to that point, nice little pair of fine scissors, trim that wick flat to the end of the tube there, as flat as you possibly can. We're still going to give it a bit of time on a slow burn when it's lit to get it to actually sort out the edge of its own wick, which is always the best way when you put a new wick in something, is to just leave it burning for a good long time on a very low flame and let it sort out its own flame pattern to what it wants to be. Quick flick of a lighter. There we go. Lovely. I'm going to leave all that wick on it, so no point trimming it. Now, what is that floating in this tank? Very strange. See if I can get a hold of it. It is cork. Okay, and there's quite a bit of it in there. Could that be responsible for clogging up the wick? Absolutely. Cork is a natural material, and it comes from, I believe, a type of oak tree, a cork oak, which I actually saw one of the other week in a place where I'd gone out with the kids. Very surprised, never seen one before in my life. But yes, I think it's a cork oak tree, but either way, because it is a natural material, it does break down over time, so that will explain the colour of the old wick. And if it's absorbing bits of cork into the wick, it isn't going to actually pull that fuel up. So I'm going to go and tip that into my little designated tub of contaminated fuels, which all ends up running through the caddy that you've seen on the stealth camping video. Because that engine will run on anything flammable, I just mix it with some old engine oil and it goes in the tank. Yes, I do filter it before anybody starts. I don't just put lumps of stuff into the car. Right, so there's the old fuel gone. I have just given it a jolly good old shaking out around with some isopropyl alcohol in it. I can still see there's a lot of residue in that tank, so I'm going to stuff it full of blue roll and give the blue roll a twisty. Right. It's about as clean as it needs to be. Okie dokie, let's get some liquid gold in it. Blow any dust out. Well, that looks a much nicer colour. Right, folks, so whenever you're doing this with these lamps, I know because this is just such a tiny little lamp, I thought I'd just keep throwing in little bits of lamp advice. When you are filling them up, don't brim them, don't go right to the top. As soon as you put that wick in, it'll take up some area, it'll spill. But also, ideally, you want a little air gap between the bottom of that and your fuel. When you've filled them up far too full, they tend to overdraw a little bit, and that will make them smoky and it'll make them smell a bit. So really, a good centimetre or two at the top of your fuel well is about where you want it. Even lamp fans. I've left my flashlight on the phone. That's not going to do any good for battery. Right then, it's been about 10-15 minutes. It is important with a new wick to let it soak up properly, because if you start lighting it and it's not, and you burn it on the top without the fuel on it, you get build-ups of carbon on the top of it, and when you get a lot of carbon on the top of it, it overdraws fuel, it behaves weird, it smokes and it smells funny, and it just doesn't burn right. On that line, if you're talking about wick trimming, realistically, you're trimming your wick very, very, very rarely. If you're constantly trimming your wick, something's going badly wrong. Really, what you'll be doing more than anything is just raising it a little bit and removing the carbon off the top of it, which you can do with a knife blade, you can do it with your finger, you can do it with the back edge of a butter knife, something flat, basically, and just scrape the carbon off the top. And that's pretty much, really wick-wise, all you should really need to be doing. Your number one reasons for a proper wick trim is going to be that you've let it run out of fuel and burn itself out, in which case that'll damage the top of your wick and you'll have to trim all that off. But generally, you're just tiddling up and removing dust and carbon, so the wick's relatively clean, and then you won't have any issue with it at all. Let's see if we can. I don't know why the first time then I moved my hand away so quick, as if it's going to explode. I don't know what that reaction was. So when we first lit this one, it went out almost straight away. Yeah, it's burning now. Careful of oily fingers when you're handling the acid etch glass. Yeah, which is mostly any opaque glass will be acid etched. That's how they've done it. Be careful with oily fingers. If you get oily stains on them, it's a pain in the backside to clean them off again and get them back to the colour they are. And if you're doing what I'm doing, wrapping it in a bit of paper, try not to set yourselves on fire. And there we go, that one is much better behaved. It's not putting itself out, so that was the problem, contaminated wick or fuel. And if anybody's still watching at this point, my hat's off to you. Obviously I am very nerdy about these sorts of lamps and stuff, and from comments and things, I'm guessing quite a few people out there seem to be. But hats off if you're still watching this bizarre lampiness going on. Really, for the pixie lamp, that is about all I really need to say, do, or whatever. It is just a charming, sweet little lamp. As you can see, once they're running and when they've got clean wicks and things, they are very, very well behaved. They're very stable. You know, they're not particularly a fire hazard unless you do daft things with them. But they'll just sit there and calmly burn until you put them out or they run out of juice. So there you have it, folks, my smallest type of lamp. Unfortunately with these, I don't think I shall be making a brew out of them. Maybe if I made a frame over and I had 4 of them under there, yeah, probably would actually. I am not going to do that. I shall save that for another video. But that is the pixie lamp. Use it as a bedside light, use it in a bathroom, use it in a greenhouse, or whatever you might need a teeny weeny and ultra long burning lamp for. those will be your go-to. Or maybe not. You might think, damn, this is a useless lamp, but it's not. It's lovely. While I'm lamp nerding again. Right then, guys, more bushcrafters on the way, honestly, not just lamps. That's all I need, Waffle. That is the pixie lamp, the littlest lamp of the lot. So, as always, guys, please do like and subscribe. Get yourselves out there, get bushcrafting, get rummaging around markets and car boot sales and see if you can't find some little gems like that. I'm going to do some more lamp videos specifically around the hurricane lamps, which are going to be more about the sort of the maintenance of them and troubleshooting when you get it. There's a few certain issues you get that I know exactly what causes it and how you can easily cure it. Because obviously if you don't know what you're doing, it'll start behaving in a certain way and you'll think, something wrong with it, and you won't know what to do with it. It's never a fun position to be in. I've been messing with them that long. There's quite a few things that they'll do in certain circumstances we know how to deal with, so I will do some lamp maintenance videos and stuff like that. But that's it from Bose and Dan, guys. Catch you on the next one. Imaginary doorway.